For today's Scratch programming assignment, you are going to code a simple joke. Every day this week, I will give you some tips and tricks for programming, and the goal is by the end of this week that you will be writing animation programs in Scratch. So we talked about the Scratch setup programming area. Just to do some housekeeping, now that we're introduced to Scratch, one of the rules is during coding time, you may not play other Scratch games. So you can go home and play Scratch games. I would love for you to go home and play Scratch games. Hit see inside and look at that code. There are some tremendously awesome Scratch games. But during class, that's not time to play Scratch games. We're just working on coding. We will have days where we explore, but most days are focused on coding. You can work on your class assignment. If you get done early, you can work on your own Scratch program. A lot of you might want to create a program and add to it every time you get done a little early. That's okay. As long as you're coding in Scratch your own program, that's okay. If you're done early, you can work on Typing Club. You can work on Pixel Art. You can work on W3 Schools. I'm going to introduce that later this week. For those of you that want to get into learning Java, HTML, I'll show you what that is later this week. Those are the things you can work on if you get done early. Okay, so we talked about on Friday how to add a sprite. So you click on the cat magnifying glass, and then you'll see everything in the sprite library. Adding a backdrop, similar, but you have to click on, it looks like a landscape, it says backdrop. That's where you click, and you'll go into the backdrop library. Later this week, we're going to teach you how to import your own sprites and backdrops. Scratch does auto-save. I do recommend that sometimes you go up to File, Save Now, just to make sure your program is being saved to your library. So today I am going to work on just giving you some super sprite tips and then let you get started. Okay, this is where your sprites are located. Each sprite has its own name. It's important to give it a name that makes sense so that when you do your drop-downs, you can easily see what sprite you're picking. XY coordinates. This is where the sprite is located. I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. Show. Once you start using the hide show command, sometimes you might lose your sprite. Click on the eyeball right here to make that sprite show up. Size. I'm going to show you how you can make your sprites bigger or smaller, and then direction is the way they're turning. So every movement by a sprite is XY coordinate, just like in math, XY grid of a graph. So if you move X positive, you're going to be moving right along the X axis. If you move negative numbers, you're going to be going left on the X axis. If you want to move your sprite up or down, you're going to change Y by positive to go up and negative to go down. So when you log into Scratch, the first thing I want to show you is that over on the right, you should always have your name, but if you go to My Stuff, this is your library. So you can go to My Stuff, and this will be all the programs that you create in class in this Scratch account. So you can see I have many programs. So this is why you want to make sure every program has a name that makes sense, because sometimes you'll go back to look at code from a previous program, and if it makes sense, then it'll be easier to find. So today I'm going to show you, we're going to cover some super sprite tips and get started with our Code a Simple Joke program. So real quick, I just want to show you this program that talks about sprites and what you can make them do. The goal is to be able to try to be able to create an animation. So let's get started.
Hello, I'm Scratchy, your new teacher. In this project I show you different ways to change the looks of a sprite. A sprite is an object you can place into the game. A sprite can think something in a think bubble. The sprite can switch costumes. You can also switch the backdrop. You can change the size of the sprite. You can change the color of a sprite. Please open the project and have a look at the code. See you next time on scratchtutorial.retsydocs.io. I think it's super cool you start to code.
Okay, so we're going to stop that. On any Scratch program, you can click See Inside and see the code. You can see on our cat sprite, we have quite a bit of code. On our parrot sprite, we also have quite a bit of code. So specifically, I want to talk about the animation of the parrot flying. So if I go down through these different if statements, right here's the code that shows the parrot flying. So there's a repeat 10, next costume, wait 3 seconds. So costumes, this is the second tab next to code. Costumes are very important. One sprite can have many costumes, and that's how you create animation in your programs. So most sprites will come with a certain number of costumes. You can always create your own. I could click a costume, right click, duplicate, and then I could make this costume anything I want. I could pick a color, I can then paint it, or I could get the paint bucket. So you can experiment. One thing I want to let you know is right here, this is the costume name, and it's helpful if these make sense. So you can go in and change the name, because then when you pick the change costume command, the drop down will be these costume names, and that makes it easier for you to figure out what costume you want to pick. So if I go to my stuff, I created a very simple animation of the parrot flying. So I click that program, I see inside, I see the code. So now if I click the flag, you can see I have my parrot flying. So one thing you need to do if you're going to have an animation, it's called initializing your variables. So on Friday, I know a lot of you said, how do I get my sprite to start at a certain spot? What you do is right down here is the XY coordinate for the sprite. You see I'm now at negative 76, 36. I'm going to drag this sprite where I want him to start in my program, and the numbers change. So this is the XY coordinate numbers for where this location is. So now if I go in there, I just make sure that is the location. So I'm going to type in negative 173. And then on the Y, it's a 35. So I click in Y, 35. And then my program might have the bird flying around, but whenever I click the green flag, he's going to go back there to start. So that's it for your tips and tricks today. Today's assignment is to code a simple joke. So you're going to click on the link, log into Scratch, File New, or hit Create. Name your program a simple joke. Delete the cat sprite and add 2 new sprites. You're going to add the code below to each sprite and select a new background. And then File, Share, select the copy link, and paste the link into My Learning by doing Control-V. Your grading rubric is to modify the code to make it your own joke, 40 points. Create your own code to change the background and change the sprite's costume after each one speaks. You're going to have to figure out that code on your own, 50 points. Additional code to make it your own is 10 points. So you're adding a lot to this program that you need to figure out how to add to. Here's your code for sprite 1. I made knock knock lettuce joke, code for sprite 2. Real quick, this is what I created. So you need to add this code, but then figure out how to add code that after your sprites tell the joke, that they each change a costume and that the background changes. And if you want to add additional code to make your sprites have some animation, that's extra points. So happy coding.